Can testing for CIDP be negative, but you still have CIDP? And the answer is yes. My ANA testing, which is usually used to see if you have lupus, but that was negative for me, and that's not really a good indicator of CIDP anyways. Nerve conduction and EMG are better indicators of CIDP because they can show that you have actual damage done to your peripheral nervous system. That said, my EMG and nerve conduction studies actually showed an ALS pattern in my motor nerves, not CIDP. And on the sensory nerves, it came back as negative, showing that I didn't have any sensory nerve damage, but I did. My hands, I couldn't feel them. So ALS, typically there's not sensory nerve damage, and I showed an ALS pattern in my motor nerves. So based on my EMG and nerve conduction, I would have shown ALS, not CIDP. But when I went to the Mayo Clinic, they had a different kind of equipment there that can measure sensory nerve damage, and I did test positive for that, which with CIDP, it's uncommon for you not to have sensory nerve damage. It's more common to have both motor and sensory affected. It's just usually you sway more one way or the other. So can an EMG and nerve conduction study come back as normal and you still have CIDP? Yes, based on my experience, because I needed the new equipment to show I had sensory nerve damage. But I think it's unlikely that your nerve conduction and EMG will come back as normal on both ends. But again, I guess it could be possible. The Spinal Tap, I would say the Spinal Tap is the best test to show whether you have autoimmune of the neurological system or not, or just in general, because every time your body makes an antibody, it makes a protein. So you get the Spinal Tap and then measure your proteins to see if they're elevated, because if they're elevated, that means you have an overactive immune system, which indicates autoimmune, not ALS or some of these other things. But can you have a normal Spinal Tap? Yes, you can. When I got diagnosed at the Mayo Clinic, they didn't have the test results back from my Spinal Tap yet, and my neurologist told me, look, if you have an elevated protein level, she said, then it just solidifies that it's definitely CIDP. She said, but if it comes back as normal, I would still be confident with my diagnosis of CIDP. She said, I've diagnosed people your age with ALS before. She said, but just looking at the overall picture, I just don't think that's what it is. I think it's CIDP. And CIDP just does not have a definitive test. It doesn't. It's basically process of elimination and looking at the overall person and all of their testing and everything like that for a neurologist to diagnose CIDP. So nothing is definitive, and the answer is yes. All of these tests can come back normal and you still have CIDP, although it's very unlikely your nerve conduction, EMG, and your Spinal Tap to all three come back as normal and you still have CIDP, although I guess it could be possible. So follow your heart. Bye.